And welcome back into OpenLine. Chuck Long here. We've got about half an hour to go on OpenLine. If you're just tuning in, we're so glad that you're watching this evening. We are talking to the expert in the legal field, one of the top law firms in the entire state of Tennessee, the Kennedy Law Firm, of course, Kevin Kennedy. Kevin, it's always great when you're here. So much great advice that you share. And, you know, and I say this many times, but the way that you answer the questions helps so many more people than just the one that's being asked at that particular point. So that's always a big benefit.
You know, Chuck, when I listened, I remember sitting in the law school, and when we'd ask a question, I always wanted to frame my questions so sophisticated, so educated. I was teaching at the university at 22, taught history. And then here I am. This is the real Kevin Kennedy. Chuck, I just talk just like street talk. The people that come see me I have sophisticated, I have unsophisticated, educated. I just tell it real. You know, as you get older, life is too short. If we can help you, we want to do it, and let's go next.
There you go. All right, right back to the lines. And by the way, if you do have one of those questions, make sure you get online as quickly as possible so that we can get to as many calls as possible. 737-7587 is the number right there on your screen. All right, I believe Chuck is on the line with us this evening. So from one Chuck to another, good evening. We're glad that you called in. What's your question for Kevin?
Just got a question, please.
Okay, go ahead.
What is better, a will or a trust?
Okay. Touche, my friend. We have that all the time, rich and then poor people. You know, what does Kevin Kennedy have? I have a will. So, you know, you want to go see the movie theater. Where's the longest line? All those guys have inspected. But I'm not saying that I won't move to a trust. One of my self-made multimillionaire friends who I really respect, brilliant man, has multiple trusts. And I'll tell you one of the reasons, he even put some trust in his children's name. Well, why didn't he just put the money in his children's name? He wanted to put it in trust because he was trying to avoid a divorce. And here we go. Why put money in a trust? I'll teach you another thing. If the money is in a trust and we get sued, they could get a judgment against Kevin Kennedy. But if all my funds were in this trust, they can't get to those assets. There's a host of reasons that I will entertain trust. There's a host of reasons I would entertain it for some of my children. And so quite frankly, the older I get, did I say all these things are legal where people have a beneficiary and a trustee that are the same? It goes against my grain because that's not what's taught in the law school. But yet I see some multimillionaires doing this. So they have avenues. Remember, I also had a smart man said, always have an exit strategy. And Kevin Kennedy, I'll tell my young lawyers, I say, don't get hemmed in. You give us enough room. If they come in on us too hard, we're out of there and we will survive. And I told the young lawyers, if Kevin Kennedy ever says, hit that door, you go now. Because the hesitation will get us all caught in a bad situation. And that's why it's so important for us to have discipline within the ranks of an army and in a law firm, in a family.
All right, great to know. Chuck, thanks so much for calling in and with that question. All right, right back to the lines. We are busy this evening. Edward on the line with us. Edward, we're glad that you're joining us. What's your question for Kevin?
I'm trying to find out about a lawsuit that is going against a Centerstone. They let my information get out. It's a breach of, what do you call it?
HIPAA.
My HIPAA Act.
Yep.
They let all my information get out, but it's two of their employees had my personal email information and stuff in their phones, and they admitted it to me, sent me the information. I sent them a packet back. They sent it back saying I filled it out wrong or something. They're just avoiding me getting a lawsuit against them. How do I go about avoiding a corporate lawsuit and get a lawyer for myself to protect my own rights?
Yeah, well, you identified the issue. Is that a HIPAA violation? Yes, it is. Are they liable? Yes, they are. Now the question is, what are your damages because of their negligence? Or they could have done it intentionally or negligently. Either way, they're liable for that. So I'll tell you one thing I'd like for you to consider doing is call the state of Tennessee, and there's always a governmental agency that works over, supervises licensing. So try to find out who's over Centerstone, and I'd go to the health care. That's why we have all these great agencies. They are there to help you and pursue, and you can file a formal complaint, and you get a lot of information. The more information you get, the better off you are, and then you can take that information to a lawyer, and they could prepare. Most of the times, they could sign a letter, and they don't want a lawsuit. So there's a lot of manipulation that can go on between you and your lawyer. You need to be getting all the information you can. Start with the state of Tennessee.
Thanks so much for calling in, Edward. We appreciate that.
Yes.
All right, right back to the lines. Kevin is on the line with us. Kevin, good evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin? From one Kevin to another.
Yes, I do.
All
Okay.
right, go ahead.
Y'all gonna laugh at this one. Our hospital is short up here. I live in Rutherford County, and they're admitting everybody to the emergency room and put them in there. And the nurses, I guess, and doctors walked out. So one of the patients the other day called in, said they're sitting in the emergency room, and they need some help. They called the police station.
Wow.
But I wonder what they are going to do with the hospitals if you can't get in and be treated.
Right. So it is a terrible circumstance. You know, both my sons are doctors. One of my sons is married to a doctor, and they're on the front line, and they're specialized. My second son's an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, head and neck surgeon, and he's married to a gastroenterologist. And guess what? They're in one of the biggest hospitals. They called them all. They said, come to the emergency room. And so put them on the front line. We have people calling that they have sat in the parking lot 12 hours because they could not get into an emergency room. The call is going out to the public through this. We are really in a state of emergency. What do you do when you really need medical care and the lines are so long? So this is going to affect all of us. It's a horror stories. I'll teach you one that I heard when they called me. It'll break your heart. A person had a stroke, couldn't get in, and then once they got in, they couldn't go out. They were diabetic, and they couldn't go out, or they have to start all over again. How is that fair? And then the administrators have their hands full just trying to meet all these. It's overwhelming. What I would love to see is the medical schools open up and put out more doctors, more nurses, so that we could help equip what we're going to deal with. If you ever get universal health care, y'all can just understand, yes, we've got a right to go in, but the lines will be so long. And they say, well, you can get this surgery in 6 weeks. In my career, I've seen people die in 6 weeks waiting for their surgeries because of governmental red tape.
All right, so it is a tricky situation.
It is.
It really is. So thanks for that call. We appreciate it. All right, right back to the lines right now. Kenneth is on the line. Kenneth, good evening. What's your question for Kevin?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Great.
Quick question. I went through a certain law firm for the wrongful death of my mom. I feel like they didn't give me everything that the case was worth. How can I find out what was the settlement?
Well, whenever you hire a law firm, they have a fiduciary duty. What does that mean? They have to look after your best interests. So what I always tell everybody, go see them. You can bring somebody along with you and say, hey, well, just explain to us, what are we asking? What is the status of my case? You have a right to go and check the file out and see. So, and any time that it seems that trust breaks down, I'm going to take both sides here for just a moment. I know these cases take forever because I have a big law firm, multiple locations. They take a long time because the judge, the docket, you know, we've got cases we can't even get on the docket for a year. Is that justice? That's just the way it is. We can't get into the emergency room. Is that fair? That's just the way it is. So, but a good understanding keeps down a misunderstanding. So if Chuck were my lawyer and my mother had passed away, I'd want to talk to him. And if Chuck evaded all the time and wouldn't talk to me, I've got a problem. And I'll have to go in and say, Chuck, if you don't want to handle the case, let me take it to another person and go. That's just the real world. If you had a mechanic and he won't work on your car and he said that, you need to get your car out and go somewhere else. If you ordered a bathroom and he won't do the work, hey, it just didn't work out. We're going to another contractor.
All right, good to know. Okay, thanks for the call. We're going again right back. Busy lines. We appreciate the calls this evening. Mike is calling in. Mike, go ahead. What's your question for Kevin?
Yeah, good evening, Chuck, and good evening, Attorney Kennedy.
Yes, good
as
evening.
a side note, you remind me of the fictional actor and role of Andy Griffith in Matlock.
Come on now.
That down home feeling like not only do you want to tell what your case is, but you also want to confess as if you're a priest. But
That's a high compliment.
I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Well, I hope you do. Mark, I don't know if you've been following this case. I know you are busy during the day, but I just wanted to get your opinion, if you haven't already been asked this question tonight, of how you think the trial of Ahmaud Arbery and also Rittenhour, I think it's like that up in Wisconsin, how you think those cases will end up coming out. And also, do you think the judges have been a little bit temperamental, especially one in Wisconsin? I'll just hang up and listen. Hope you guys have a great night.
You
Thanks.
have a great day.
Appreciate it.
I take that as a great compliment.
Absolutely.
One of my old lawyer mentors that was over me, they said, you watch him. He's the Andy Griffith type. I said, well, explain it. I was a young, and he was so smooth, but he always came out winning. So he was one of my mentors, and I loved him, and I thank you for that compliment. Wow, let's talk just a minute about these situations. Do we have a right to go home and get our gun and walk down, and we know that there's going to be some problems out here? That's interpretation, yes, but also the common sense. Chuck, you get yours and I get mine, and we go down there and we're going to protect. Do we have a right to do that? Yes. But the question is, when they charge at us, it gets into a lot of gray areas. This case, it begs for a Kevin Kennedy lawyer, because and I watched the prosecution. He was effective. I watched the judge. He reminded me many judges that I go in front of. That's why I really don't want you to have to be involved in a lawsuit. I don't want your family member charged. It's tremendous agony for a loved one to be charged. And if you go down there looking, we could have a problem. And it's going to cost a bunch of money and can ruin someone's life. You know, the question that everyone says on this, did he initiate this? If he did, he can't say it's self-defense. Well, don't you know the lawyers are always going to be dancing? Well, Chuck initiated. Well, if we're defending Chuck, we're going to say he didn't initiate, because that's the way out. So it gets to interpretation. And is it a difference in the skilled lawyers? Absolutely. Is that fair? Well, is it fair that you get a really skilled lawyer and they didn't? Is it fair that your family had the resources and they worked 50 years and they mortgaged their home to save their son? Those are the questions that come back that do haunt me. What is justice and what is fair? I would teach you, if it's your family, you go use your best judgment to keep our family out of trouble. Don't let your kid drive 90 miles an hour. It's going to be a problem. We're going to get sued. He's going to go to the hospital. If he runs around with a gun all the time, it's going to be a problem. And then as soon as Chuck pulls the gun and shoots someone in self-defense, here we go. The police have arrested Chuck. He's being sued. All of his family's money is going to make his bond, and then you need the best lawyer that you can hire to try to maneuver through here. Yeah, anybody's guess. My professional opinion, you watch when they get ready to render the verdict, here we go. My mentors always said, when the jury comes in, if they'll make eye contact with the defendant, they're voting with the defendant. And if they're looking off, won't look at the defendant, that's just body language. That's 37 years experience. Done many jury trials. I won 11 jury trials in a row. Multiple counts, multiple felonies. And I never really said I was a student of the law, but I did understand people. And I knew that those arguments were real. They were persuasive. I had a gift, and I loved to share it. And when I got people that I legitimately did not believe they should go to the penitentiary because they were innocent, boy, they needed Kevin Kennedy in the worst kind of way. So that's what I would say to this. In the big circumstance, how are they going to unfold? We don't know. But I know this, you get a real hardcore DA. I worked at the DA's office. You get one, he'll hunt you. And then if it's a hung jury, guess what? It's not over. You got to have 12 not guilty, 12 guilty. If it's hung, they can just keep on spending money. Here we go a year from now, bring them in and go again.
And you know, and it's interesting, Mike, talking about both of those cases that are in the national headlines right now. Both have video, too.
Yes.
And it's like you say, it's all interpretation.
Come on,
It's not
Chuck.
black and white, even when you've got the video.
Yeah, and then it's kind of, how do you explain it? I had a witness one time, eyewitness, and my client was a very sophisticated person defending his daughter in a major problem. And I said, well, what are you going to do with the eyewitness? And this guy, he said, Kevin, he just didn't see what he thought he saw. One of my greatest arguments that we cleared a lot of people, things are not always as they appear. And it was very interesting. When my mother was still alive, I used to practice in front of her. I said, what did you think, Mom? And she said, God gave that to you. And I used it because it was so effective.
There you go. Good to know. All right, we appreciate the calls. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more calls to get to. So come back with us. You're watching Open Line.